Alright everyone, JJ Rob here, and today we're going to be working on a character for a game that a friend of mine and I are building. And we're going to be working with sort of a hybrid workflow, all inside Blender, to go 100% from sketch to sculpt and model, all the way to textured and rigged and animated character. I'm not sure how long it's going to take me. I'm not a professional, at least up to this point. I've learned a lot, and I've been drawing and sculpting and doing art for a long time, but I haven't been working with Blender all that long. However, I have been doing kind of a deep dive over the last probably 5-6 months now, and I've become pretty comfortable. So we're going to use that, and we're going to see what we can do here. So I guess all that is just to say, please forgive me if there's something I miss or something I do wrong that you don't agree with or whatnot. Anyone who's used this program knows that it's a constant learning process. It doesn't get much more complicated than, especially building a character inside of Blender. So, hold on just a second. I managed to drop my pen somehow. Okay, so what we see here is a grease pencil layer inside of Blender. I apologize for skipping this part, but I wasn't sure that I was going to go live with this until after I'd already done the initial concept. So I will walk you through real quick what I've done up to this point, and don't worry, because we will be doing more. I'm not done sketching. As you can see, she's just a naked character right now. She doesn't really have much in the way of clothing. So let's go. I'm going to go to my layout mode. What I did is I started it up in 2D animation mode last night, and did my initial rough sketch, which let's hide the ink so you can see kind of here. The model was not there yet. It was just the sketch at full opacity. Let's bring them both up for a second. See, very rough sketch. My main primary intention was just to be loose and cartoony, because I want to try to make my life a little bit easy and not try to go super realistic with these characters, and be able to kind of play with the designs and do things that aren't necessarily realistic or tethered to physics or whatnot. That's one of the benefits of doing a more stylized design. So that's what we're going for here. You can see she's got a very large head. She's meant to be somewhat older character, maybe 20s, 30s, not like a teen character, even though kind of the cartoony heads tend to make a character look younger. So we're going to do our best to make her feel like a full-grown woman, even though her proportions are more cartoony. Let's see here. Let's bring this opacity back down. Bring our inks back up just so you can see them. Now, as you can see, I have the world set differently on the animation workspace, just so it's easier to draw, easier to see. Basically, so I took this character and did a block out based on this sketch. So turn it back on here. And in order to do that, it's really, really simple. It's just, let me turn off the concepts here real quick. Basically, pretty much every piece you see here is built from a basic cube. Let's turn off my cameras just so we can see. So basically just Shift A, add in a mesh, basic cube, like so. G, Z to move it up. We're going to scale it down, basic cube. And then we're just going to hit Control and 5 on your keyboard, which what that does, all it does is just applies a modifier to a subdivision surface modifier to it, and automatically puts it at level 5 in the viewport, so that you've got some geometry to work with on it. And then the reason I like doing it this way is I'm just gonna, let's move it over here and just say this was an appendage. If we go into edit mode, you can see it's still the actual geometry that it's computing is still based on the cube. The subdivision surface is just a layer added on top of that, so it's not real geometry yet. So it's easy to manipulate here. So if I want to, I can go ahead and add a loop cut in here. Control R, move that around, and that automatically adds more geometry for me to play with. And then I'll usually go into X-ray mode by pressing Alt Z, which I believe is just this little toggle up here is the equivalent in the UI, just so that it's easy for me to grab a bunch of vertices at once, and then I'll move those around to adjust the shape. All right, so do that, and you can see we can continue to adjust it. Now, if we need it to be a little less rounded, we can do that by selecting vertices we want to adjust, and then if you hit Shift E and scale it, that is going to push it closer and closer to those original boundaries. And when you go all the way to the edge like that, you can see the color changes, just to show you kind of how tight it is. And now if we switch back out of X-ray mode, you can see that those corners that I had selected and did that on are super sharp. And you can do that individually. I think it goes by edge. I don't think you can do it by single vertex. Let's check that real quick. Yeah, it has to be at least 2 vertices selected, so it's an edge. And then you can scale it to, basically it's just going to stretch to that edge. And generally for this block out face, you would never want to go this geometric, I guess, unless, I suppose, if you wanted to do this same process for like a hard surface model, that'd be a little different. But for an organic character like this, I kind of want to keep them rounded, but there are cases where it needs to be a little bit more rectangular. So let's delete that. That gives you an idea. Now, actually, these hands and feet, I have a separate file that I'll pull these in from, because I don't want to have to. You don't want to have to model those kind of things every time. So I've got a pre-made version of that I did in the past that I'll bring it in and then I'll make some adjustments. But it's built the same way. There's just a lot more boxes and stuff going on here. All right, so. And actually, I'm seeing something I kind of want to fix about that real quick. But let's not worry about it right now. Mainly, what I'm pointing at is since this originally had been applied, which actually, if I hide this, as you can see, the blocks, the fingernails are getting kind of lost there, but we're not going to worry too much about that. Anyway. Let's switch back over. Another thing I like to do is I like to separate my work into stages and try to be somewhat organized, because it's really easy. Blender just tends to just create a lot of data and a lot of stuff in your scene as you're working. And it's easy to kind of get lost in that. Which, by the way, this is just an instance of this model. I created by just going to the collection, which I need to rename. And then if you right click, go to instance to scene, that's going to create a new instance, which is just a copy. It's a copy that follows the original. So for instance, if I make a change to this original one, it's going to update inside of the instance versions. And I just use that basically just to line it up with the initial profile sketch and try to make sure that everything matched up pretty closely. So that's why that's there, just so you know. And then what I did was created a new scene to keep everything separate, because I kind of want to keep everything in that scene just where it is right now. And I actually did the instances. Made new instances of the grease pencil objects, just so I have reference, which I'm going to turn on and off as we work. And then I created a completely separate copy of the original model, because I don't want to adjust that original model. I want it to stay where it is, so that I have a base to sculpt from. So this is a separate copy. If I make edits to this, it's not going to affect the original one. Okay, so let's dig in here. So what we need to do is it's a good idea to work modularly when you're sculpting, depending on what kind of computer you've got. You don't want too much geometry working all at once. So I've actually separated the head and the neck into its own object here, and we're going to work on that first. So let's go into sculpt mode, and as you can see, we're working with Blender 2.83, which has introduced the face sets, which are pretty awesome. They're very similar to polygroups if you ever worked in ZBrush. Essentially, it's just a way to, I guess, mark an area of the mesh. This work a little bit like masks, but they've got more flexibility and more, I guess, persistence than masks. You know, masks are meant to be just done like real quick, do something, and then get rid of the mask. Whereas these kind of can stick around. They're still not permanent, but they're more permanent, and you can kind of reuse them. So let's start by adding eyes. Let's get our eye sockets in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our draw brush by pressing X, which is kind of the primary brush that you're likely going to be using. Some people prefer using, they kind of lean more heavily on the clay brush. Just depends. I try to make use of most of my brushes. One thing we want to double check is that the symmetry is correct, which it's not right now. This is something that you have to, that comes up. You see how when I hover over the mesh, the extra little blue cursor is kind of floating off in the middle of space over there? That's not supposed to be happening. It's supposed to be showing up symmetrically on the mesh. And the reason that is because I need to apply my scale and possibly my location rotation on this object, but let's just do scale because it's probably been, I haven't applied it since I initially scaled the blocking in when I did the square. So let's I just did Control A, apply scale, and now let's go back into sculpt mode and see if that fixes it. That didn't fix it, so there's something else going on here. Let's hide that and go back out. See if I remember. Maybe I need to apply all the transforms, so let's do that. Oh, actually, you know what it is? It's the I'm gonna undo because I don't want all the transforms applied yet. What it is the origin. So the origin needs to be set. It thinks the origin's over here, which I guess it is over here. It should be in the center. So I'm gonna see. Let's make sure cursor should be at world origin. So Shift S, put cursor at world origin, and now with our head selected, I want to go ahead and go to the object set origin menu, which there may be a shortcut for that. I'm not entirely sure. If anyone knows, let me know. That I set origin to geometry. That's not what we want. Let's go ahead and set it to the 3D cursor, because it's usually a good idea on these character sculpts to have everything, the origin for everything set at the base of the feet. Alright, and now if we go back in sculpt mode, we should be good. Now it's meeting up right at the center. That's what we want. So let's go in. I'm going to turn my concept back on. Let's make sure, we do want to make sure our concepts are not selectable, although it shouldn't select it in this mode anyway. But okay, and then we're going to hold Control and push in on the mesh. Holding, basically, if you're not familiar with sculpting in Blender, all these blue brushes are additive geometry, so these are going to add geometry. Although in some cases, like the crease brush, that's not actually the case. I don't know exactly how they define it, but essentially the blue ones are additive and the red ones are subtractive, but it's not quite that simple, as you'll see. So by default, the draw brush is going to add like that, but instead we want to subtract, so we're going to hold Control, and that's going to do the opposite, just like so. And we do that for the eyes. That's a common way of kind of starting these sculpts. Let's switch over to the side view, see how that's looking. Let's see here. I know I set this up. Thought I did anyway. Oh, I need to show my other version of the. matter of fact, let's put these in their own collection so that it's easy to hide, show and hide the whole collection. So select them both, press M, create a new collection, reference. You see it's down here. And now I can, I'm just going to make the whole collection not selectable by pressing this. If you're not seeing that, you need to go up to your filters here and make sure that these are all on. That shows what options you have for the different layers and collections. And then now if we flip into side orthographic with the 3 on the numpad, now we can kind of see how this matches up with my side profile. As you can see, that socket kind of needs to be pulled back a bit, so that's why we have this. And let's switch over to my sculpting workspace too, which is really set up pretty similar to the other one right now, but it also looks like I need to pull the ear back as well. So let's go back into sculpt mode. I'm going to keep my concept up for now, and I'm using the grab brush with G, and I'm just going to kind of slowly pull it back. Let's make sure I'm not getting too it's actually, if you find that the grab brush is being too distorting your object too much, you can use the elastic deform brush, which works very similar. It just has more of a broader area of effect and generally doesn't distort things as much. It's meant for these kind of big changes like this. And do the same thing with the, then see, I'm going to want to use the grab brush for the eye socket, because if I use the elastic distort, it's going to pull the entire face. Whereas grab brush is just going to kind of pull more locally from where I'm actually. And let's turn our concept back off. Okay, and now that's a start. Let's go ahead and smooth this out just a little bit. Right now our mesh is, it looks like, at about 1 million faces, which is honestly perfectly fine. I'm going to try not to need any more than that, especially for a stylized character like this. So we'll see how much. At some point we're going to need to use Dyn Topo and all that, but let's see how much we can do without messing with the topology too much. Just going to pull this nose up a tad. Let's pull out our chin a bit, and I'm going to need to establish some lips. So let's do that by, let's turn off the reference real quick. Let's use a mask and get pretty small here. And let's draw out kind of the lip shapes. Like so. Looks pretty close. Okay, and then I'm gonna use Control I to invert that, and then let's get us a little more room with our tools over here on the left. I'm gonna use the scale tool, and let's see here. I need to set the pivot to unmasked, like so. Actually, I don't even, maybe not the scale, let's use the move. And let's just move that out a bit, just to get us a little bit of geometry to work with, like so. And then let's clear the mask with Alt-M. Go back to our masking brush. Do the same thing for the bottom lip. And I'm gonna actually, I don't even know if let's check our our concept real quick. I don't even think I drew it in this way. Her mouth is pretty much closed, but if you're doing a character that's going to be animated and needs a mouth that opens, sometimes it's a good idea to model it a little bit open, so it's easier to I guess easier to animate. So let's do that. I'm going to do it just a little bit different from the concept, and I'm actually going to model it open. So let's go ahead and do our bottom lip, but let's leave a gap between the two. I'll probably have to pull her chin down because, you know, your mouth, as your mouth opens, your chin swings down, your jaw swings down along with your chin. So, okay, like that. Control I, and same basic deal. Sculpt, set pivot to unmasked, move, pull it out. Okay, and Alt-M, like so. Okay. Okay, so we got our lips. Switch back. I'm gonna real quick too. I'm just gonna go ahead and get the start of a mouth cavity. So I'm gonna mask out in here real quick, like so. Same deal. Alt M. Switch to move. Let's go ahead and set the pivot, and then pull it back a bit, just so there's plenty of room in there. Okay, and let's go to our draw brush, Alt M. Okay, let's check our reference. So I want to keep her nose fairly small. Most of the proportions are pretty close to how I want it to be. Let's mess with the ears a little bit. Check it from the side. See, they're a little bit different, you know, because obviously my sketch is not perfect. So here's where you kind of have to make a decision of how you want to interpret it, whatever reference you're using. And let's hide that and just see. You also definitely suggest that you want to use both your orthographic and your perspective modes just to kind of get a feel for what's going on. Definitely need to work with our chin. So let's first off, I'm going to inflate using the inflate brush, which is I, just to kind of give it a little more mass there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just use the grab brush, pull it down just a little bit. That's enough for now. We'll work with that here in a minute. Let's go ahead and add eyes. We're going to do that separately just to wrap it around. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to shift right click to place the 3D cursor, which you can't see because we're in sculpt mode. You can go to your overlays here, turn on 3D cursor. And I'm just going to add a UV sphere. Now usually, even for circular objects, I would say, you know, it's probably better to use just a cube and then use a subdivision. But for this one, the topology actually works pretty good for us, the way that it's built, because it's automatically got this kind of side where all the stuff converges. That works really well for our pupil. So let's just make sure we're pretty close to where we want it. Let's check it from the side. Not too bad. Pull it back just a tad more. You can see, you know, the eye sockets actually do go back pretty heavily into a skull. People kind of tend to underestimate that. Now we'll have to adjust this a bit, and there's more, you know, sculpting to be done. But and it's going to depend on how the rest of this face structure works out. But that's good for now. Let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier to that. And let me see, did I bring over my center? Yeah, center. Okay, so this object here is just a empty that's been placed in the scene. It's right here. That I just like to keep at the world origin and use that for all my mirrors, because I know I'm going to be using a bunch of different objects, and I want them all to be mirrored off of the same thing. So let's select our eyeball, mirror modifier, use our center, go center 02. There we go. Now we've got two mirrored eyes, and we're going to sculpt our eyelids and stuff around that. Okay, so select our head again, go back into sculpt mode. I'm going to draw. And let's bring our size down. Let's start pulling the eyelids out around the eyeball. Now this detail work, this is getting into where we may have to use a little bit of dynamic topology soon. I'm going to see what I can do without before we get into that. Because I want to keep this character somewhat simple. And yeah, it looks like I'm gonna. It's time to go ahead and start with Dyntopo, because this area is getting a little funky. Or at the very least, we may need to remesh. Let's try remeshing. See if. So for that, we just I'm just gonna use the eyedropper just to kind of, because I don't really want to add more geometry. I just want to remesh the geometry that's there right now. So Control R. Okay, and that remeshed it. Let's see if it makes this part a little, yeah, that made it a little bit easier to manipulate here. Check it from the side. Always be checking multiple angles, because you don't want it to just look good from one angle. You want it to look good from every angle. Another good thing is to check it from below. See how it's looking. Like so. Okay, and let's start working on this brow ridge here. Smooth it out first of all, because it doesn't need to be that harsh, especially on a pretty female. And then let's pull out this ridge here a little bit. Actually, let's inflate this edge of the skull a little bit. Okay, and let's check our reference, see how we're doing here. Let's work a little bit on these inner corners of the eyes. Let's pull inward a little bit. There we go. And get those eye whites kind of matching up. Get that slant to the eye, just like is in the reference. And, you know, I'll have to take some creative liberties. Let's see how it's looking there. Okay. Okay, let's carve in the jaw line. Oops. We use the draw brush and control. Then we'll smooth it out. Control, smooth. Also, I'm going to switch over and do the, we'll use a crease brush to kind of start pulling out this crease in the jaw. We're going to hit control and just kind of pull that out like so, just to make a mark. Okay, let's turn the reference on again. Now I don't want this to match up exactly with the drawing, just because, like I said, I drew it with the mouth closed and we want it to be slightly open. So the chin should be slightly lower, but not too much. Same thing here. Let's try and smooth that out a bit, like so. Perfect. Okay. Okay, let's start working with the mouth, because right now it's very flat and two-dimensional and kind of pulled out funny. So one thing we need to go ahead and do is the mouth kind of curves around rather than being kind of stuck on the front of your face. It's more of a curve, like if you look at it below. So we need to make sure that this pulls around towards the back. Okay, and again I'm going to switch to our crease brush, and this time I'm going to keep it on default where it cuts in, and just kind of use it to draw out the corners of our mouth and kind of better define the inside here. Okay, let's get this little dimple here. Let's I'm going to inflate that a little bit though, because it's too dented. Let's pull this down, smooth. Use your smooth not sparingly, but try not to overdo it on the smooth. You know, don't press down too hard. Just light little smoothing here, light little smoothing there. Because you don't want to just completely destroy the geometry you've just built. Let's inflate this part of the bridge of the nose a little bit. Inflate this little top. Let's look at it from the side. Turn on a reference. I don't want it to be quite that pointy. So we just need to do a little bit of work with it. Also need to kind of inflate this bottom part. Smooth. Inflate. Just to make sure I get that kind of curve on the nose and a little bit more of a rounded end of the nose. That's pretty good. See how it looks from the front. Not too bad. Let's go ahead and see if we can carve in some nostrils. Okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. I need to define that bottom lip a little more because it got kind of lost whenever we were moving the chin around. So let's take a look at it from the side. It's okay. I do want to kind of inflate the bottom lip a little bit because she's got those kind of full, voluptuous lips. I want to make sure we got plenty to work with there. And then we're going to take, let's take our crease brush and let's kind of try and define the boundaries of the lips. I'm going to switch back and forth between control and the regular version of the brush to kind of pull at it, push and pull. Okay, let's see it from the side. How we doing here? Let's take a look in relation to the reference. I'd say both of her lips need to be fuller, bigger. So let's pull them around a bit, like so. Okay, and then both the bottom and the top, I'm gonna do a little bit of inflating. Less so at the corners, more towards the center. Try to get more of a defined curve there. Okay, and then let's take our crease brush again and see if we can get a little bit more definition here, especially in the center, like so. Okay, and carve out this corner of the mouth a little more. Okay, and inflate the lip again because it tends to lose a little bit whenever you start pulling it around like that. Should be quite that much. There we go. Smooth that out just slightly. Okay, and then let's get back to our crease brush. Or actually, let's need to inflate the top lip a little bit too. So let's try and get a little bit more meat to the top lip. Like so. Let's zoom out, look around, see how it looks from the side. Go from there. Look from the bottom. See, now we've got much more of a pronounced curve there. Still feel like we could use a little more bottom lip though. maybe pull it back even a little bit more. Just to try to get it. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay. That's a good start. But let's focus on a couple other things real quick. Some issues with the nose we need to work out. So, like, these nostrils need to be pulled back. There we go. That's much better. I want to keep a little bit of that kind of sprightly point to the nose. Keep it fairly small. Okay, and let's start working on the bridge of the nose here. It needs to cut out a little bit there, but then I need a little bit more of this dip back. Smooth that out, because it should be just a nice little gradual fall off. So, okay, and then one important thing we want to go ahead and try to get started is carving out this little crease that usually comes above the eye top lid, where the skin usually folds in, except on some Asian descendants, you know, the kind of Asian eyes. That's one of the things that distinguishes Asian eyes, is this flap of skin usually doesn't fold in on itself here. Let's see how long we've been going. We're going 42 minutes. I'm gonna have to take a break here in a bit and go get something to eat and take a bathroom break, but we'll be back. I plan on working on this character pretty much non-stop for the next day and a half or so, and I'm gonna try to stream pretty much all of it. And hopefully I'll pick up some of you guys as viewers along the way. So please like and subscribe if you're watching this. I've got a little bit of an underbite going on here that I need to fix. Let's make this smaller. Alright. Okay, let's work on continue working on this crease a little bit. Sometimes you gotta kind of push and pull and smooth something back out in order to go back in a little bit tighter. Let's go ahead and try to start pulling out a crease for the top of the eyelid here. There we go. Because it's basically a big fold of skin. Not that pronounced in reality, but the basic shape is correct. Okay, like so. Switch back over to the crease brush again and just kind of define that corner a little bit. And we want to do, let's get our draw brush and try to pull this part of the lid out a bit. Like so. And then we're going to switch back to our crease brush, control, and define that edge. put a stake in the ground. Like so. Okay. Then we can smooth this part of it out just a little. So that part's not so pronounced. Okay. Alright, let's check our reference. We need to work on the back of the head, the ears. Definitely need to make some adjustments to the head shape. It's a little awkward right now. So number one, I need to pull the forehead back a bit. If you ever look at a person in profile, the front of their face is not flat. It actually kind of slants back, especially on females. So we want to make sure we honor that. The back of her skull has also got a little bit of weird shape right now, so we need to adjust that. And I need to fix how her head meets her neck here, because that's not very natural. There should be more of a indentation back of the skull, this connection to the neck here. So let's fix that. So I'm going to take the draw brush, make it pretty big. We're just going to go ahead and hold control and kind of push that area in a bit. Same thing here. We're just going to kind of get rid of this ridge, because the back of the skull should be much more rounded than this. So I'm just going to kind of smooth, maybe do control, smooth. See how we're looking here. That matches up to the reference. Let's grab our grab brush and just kind of adjust all this a bit. See if we can get keep working on the back of the skull. Smooth. I need to pull out that center just a tad. Let's inflate that so I don't have like this weird ridge in the middle. Let's try to get a little bit more of a gradual fall off leading into the neck. Smooth out that transition. Let's get a little bit of our jaw ridge back though. Oh, and I'm on the inflate brush, no wonder there we go. Just get a little bit of that back for now. We're just kind of setting a placeholder. Oops. Let's do kind of the same thing here just to get a feel for what's going where here. This needs a little bit more bulk, that back part of the skull. Like so. Just kind of smooth this transition on the top of the head. We may not end up following the reference quite exactly, although I can go ahead and pull this. Let's use the elastic to form here. Let's try to pull this area up. Yeah, that's much better. Let's go ahead and inflate this bottom part of the neck a little bit. Get more of a curve out there. Okay, let's see here. We're 50 minutes. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back in a few minutes. If you're following along with me, go ahead and go get something to drink, bathroom break, whatever. Okay. Alright, we're back. Let's go ahead and keep working on the head. Alright, I'm going to take a look at something. So cartoon heads can be a little strange. The proportions are definitely, they don't follow the exact same guidelines as like a traditional idealized, something you might see in Loomis or Bridgman or whatever. So we need to decide how we want to do the ears, if that's a good spot for them, which I think it might be. They're a little lower than the brow, which generally they would match up with, say, between like around the nose would be the bottom and then the brow would be the top. But that's just a guideline, and that's on a more realistic figure. So I do think I kind of want to make the ears just a tad larger. Well, maybe not. I think that's pretty good. Let's adjust this curve of the jaw a little bit. There we go. Smooth all that out. And let's continue to work with the brow ridge a bit. Needs a little bit softer of a fall off, I think. Again, remember, this is a stylized design, so we want to try to avoid any unnecessary details. Really keep it to smooth design. So I'm going to use my flatten brush here just to kind of make sure this is basically a kind of a pretty smooth plane. I'm going to smooth it a little bit, like so. Smooth up here. May want to crease it just a tad, just to define that area just a little bit, just slightly. I don't want a super sharp crease. Okay, smooth it back out just a bit, just to, like so. Okay. Okay, if we look at it from this angle, we kind of want to adjust this fall off a bit, I think. Just kind of round off that forehead a little bit. Okay, zoom out, see how it looks. Not too bad. Okay, let's pull this part of the neck out a bit. Just so that's a little bit better of a transition. And let's take our clay strips brush, C. Let's kind of pull out these neck muscles. Start getting a little bit of anatomy there. Again, we don't want too much detail, so let's be super simple with it. Okay. I'm going to take my draw brush, hold control, and just kind of define that valley a bit. There we go. Smooth this. Like so. Get a little bit more right there. And smooth it out again. Smooth under the chin. Let's see if we can get this edge of the jaw a little bit better defined. Smooth out the back of the jaw a bit. Okay, and then let's take our crease brush. Actually, this part can be a little tricky. Let's pull that out just a tad, give us a little more to work with. And then let's take our crease brush, hold control, and just kind of try to, just define that line leading up to the chin. And then smooth out the bottom. And now we have a pretty well defined chin. Keep this as smooth as possible because a stylized cartoony character should not have all that much detail. The detail that's there should be well considered, but there doesn't need to be a lot of it. Okay, and let's define this lip shape by using again the crease brush. So. Get a little bit more of this nose there. Okay, let's try and get her nostrils. Let's use the clay brush, I guess. Just trying to kind of get some nostrils going here. Just barely. Nothing big, nothing major. Okay, and then we will probably want to give a crease to the brow ridge. So control. If this were male, I'd want it to be kind of a flat, I guess, wedge crease. But for female, I'm going to keep it just to a line. Smooth it out a little bit. We don't want it to be too sharp. Same thing for kind of defining the edge of the nose and the point. Okay, that's good for now. Okay. Now this ear is actually already starting to work out pretty good, but we want to take, let's take our draw sharp, which is pretty similar to the crease brush, honestly. I don't really use it that often, but for small details like this, for kind of laying out small details, it's pretty good. And we just kind of want to draw, there's a bunch of different ways to do ears. We're not going to get into an anatomy thing right now, but we're going to try to keep it pretty simple. And let's go back to our regular draw brush because I need a little more area, and let's kind of get this middle dimple here. And actually, let's grab a crease brush here. I'm actually going to get rid of that and just have a single curve here. Real ear is more complicated than that, but okay, and we're using my crease brush, holding Control. Yeah. Guys, hold on just a second, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Never mind.
no, no. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, so the ear here, again, we want to keep it as simple as possible. Just going to keep it down to a few shapes. Flow in. Almost more like a graphic design than actual anatomy. Okay, let's kind of get our crease in there. Another one in here. I'm going to reverse crease to pull this part out. Smooth it a little bit. Crease again. Okay, and then try to really dig this part in as much as we can without it going all funky on us. There we go, not too bad. It's got it from kind of an angle. May want to use our grab brush, just kind of adjust it a little bit. Like so. We also want to get, there's kind of a ridge, stair-stepping effect on the back of the ear here, so we want to get that in. So let's use our draw. Let's carve in. I'm going to take our draw sharp again. I'm just going to kind of carve in that ridge. Try not to go too far. Just want a little bit like so. And it should go all the way around to the lobe. Something like that. Smooth it out just a tad. Okay. let's try to get this all smoothed out a little bit. Okay, I think we're good on the ear for now. I'm seeing kind of a weird spot in the mesh here. This most likely is just a place where maybe there's a hole or whatnot. That should hopefully go away if we remesh again. So let's do that real quick. I'm gonna save real quick, and I'm actually just gonna, well, there's no need for that. Let's just save real quick, and then let's go back to our sculpt mode. I'm gonna take the eyedropper under remesh here, just to get a placeholder where we're at. It says we're at 0.001, which is pretty high res. Where fix folds, preserve volume, face sets, we'll leave all that on. Let's hit remesh. Okay, we didn't lose too much in the way of detail, thankfully. And if I smooth that out, see, now it's gone. Okay, you can see in some of the smaller areas here, this is something you probably don't want to do too far into the sculpt. That's kind of why you should probably, until you're ready to go into the final bits of detail, keep your sculpt in separate pieces, so that if you have to remesh one area, it doesn't affect an area that you've already kind of gotten to a good spot. I'm just going to kind of try to fix these lips a little bit real quick. Just going to push that in. Go to our crease brush. Crease it. Same thing here. Alright, that's good for now. Now let's go ahead and give her some eyebrows and some lashes, just because that kind of completes the face a bit. Actually, before we do that, let's fix this back of the head. Smooth out that part right there. We want a little bit more of a smooth curve going around the back of the ear here, and a little bit more of a dent leading up to the ear. Smooth that out a little more. Okay, like so. I don't know if that's super anatomically correct, but it looks okay. Again, we're working with stylized proportions here, so the whole head kind of has to accommodate those big ass eyes, and so everything is a little different. Okay, let's see here. That's pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I think, is we're not going to... You'll see different ways to do this, but because this is cartoony and pretty stylized, I'm going to do pretty simple, do something pretty simple for the eyebrows and the lashes. We're just going to model those out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use shift right click to set the 3D cursor. And then we're going to add in a plane. I'm just going to come in very large, so let's scale it down. We're going to hit RX90 to rotate it. Move it a little bit. Scale again. I'm going to hit Shift Tab to turn on our snapping here. We're going to snap to faces. Which bear with me a little bit, because yeah, that should work. Snap to faces, and now we're going to go into edit mode, and let's add a modifier here, a shrink wrap modifier, and we're going to use the head as our object, and it's going to be above the surface, and then we're going to add an offset. And then last thing we're going to do, this is pretty much a retopology workflow, is we're going to set this on cage to true, so that the geometry we see actually matches what is showing up. Let's make that offset like 0.001, something very small. And now let's start moving the vertices around. like so. Move it up, extrude it out, scale, maybe too much. Extrude it out, extrude out, extrude out, scale, extrude out, scale, extrude out. Let's see, if you run into that, if you're getting to where you can't see as much, we can turn down where the clipping starts. Oops. Actually, what was it at? Was it 0.1? So let's put it at 0.01. And that way you can zoom in closer before it starts to clip, which can be useful when you get into these close quarters. Let's see, I may want to make that a triangle. No, let's leave that. Let's actually scale that back up a little bit. Okay, and because shrink wrap can be a little bit finicky to deal with when you've got more and more geometry and stuff, so sometimes it's good to go ahead and just apply it after a certain point, so we don't have to mess with that anymore. Now let's give it some solidity. We're gonna add a solidify modifier. Put the offset to 1 and just pump this up a little bit, just to give it a little bit of solid. And honestly, I think we're going to leave it at that for right now. Maybe just to make it look better, we'll add a subdivision surface to it. And actually, let's go in here. Let's just kind of pull, just give it a little bit more width in some spots. Like so. Okay, and then we just need to give it a mirror. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to add the center, our little empty center. Okay, and now we have some eyebrows. Now let's work on the eyes. And you'll have to bear with me because I haven't done a ton of these, at least in modeling, so we're going to be... I've watched some tutorials on different people, how they do it, so we'll manage. Let's go into X-ray mode so we can see what we're doing. Basically, we want to give a dimple in that. So let's do smooth, connected only, GZ. Oops. I'm turning on proportional editing here. Let's turn our influence down a little bit because we want to kind of keep a lot of that geometry intact. We want to move in the y-axis. Actually, let's escape. Let's go back into... Oh, that is X-ray mode. GY. Let's move it back to like right there and see how that does. Okay, that's pretty good. I know it looks a little weird right now. And this might actually be a good time to do a little bit of vertex painting just to see what's going on. But first let's get her eyelashes. Let's do that next. I'm going to do the same basic process as I did for the eyebrows. So let's shift right click, move our cursor just somewhere right there over the eye. We're going to add another plane in, scale it, oops, scale it, rotate it 90 degrees in the x-axis, and then we're just going to kind of move it so it's snaps. Let's go ahead and scale it some more. Also, let's go ahead and apply the scale. I didn't do that on eyebrows. Let's do that as well. Apply the scale. Oops. And actually, let's not do that until after we've applied the solidify, because that's going to screw that up. Let's go into edit mode. Do the same thing. We need to add, let's add a, it's possible the shrink wrap may screw us up here, but let's just see. Above surface, 0.01, 0.001 above the surface, on cage, and then let's just move our vertices around a bit here, and we just want to take care not to snap to the eye, but actually just to snap to the lid. Okay, and now I'm just going to take that, extrude it out. Same thing. Extrude, 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 extrude. Rotate. Let's rotate that one too. Rotate. Let's scale that in just a little. Extrude. Scale a little more. Okay. Extrude. And extrude. And on this end here, go ahead and extrude out a little bit, scale it down. Let's just kind of give one a little bit more on this, a little bit more going on here. Actually, let's okay, and then let's add our subdivision surface to it, and our solidify again. With 1, and then 0.001, like so. And then I'm just going to add, let's add a little bit of thickness, but only to this side. Let's go to X-ray. I'm going to press Alt-S, which shrink fatten, and it basically just moves all the vertices out along their normals. Do the same thing with that one. Turn off my snapping for a second. Okay, let's go back out of there. Not too bad. Let's get a little bit more here as well. GZ. Hold shift to do kind of minimal movements. And for these over here, we just want to kind of come out away from the head a little bit, which is not going to do because I need to apply the shrink wrap modifier. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back into object mode. Let's apply the shrink wrap, and now let's go back into our edit mode, and now we shouldn't be restricted. Go ahead and add one more loop cut right there. Voila. Now we have eyelashes. We do need to add our mirror modifier again, which if I remember right, there's a trick here. If you select, actually no, I need to select our eyelash first and then select this one. And then we hit Control L and we're gonna link materials, I believe. Oh, I may have done that wrong. Try that again. Undo. Actually, I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what I'm trying to do. If anyone knows what I'm trying to do, let me know because I forgot. Basically, what I was trying to do is copy over the modifiers, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So let's just add our mirror modifier. Center. Voila. Okay, and now, because we want to start being able to visualize our head, because it can be a little tough to see certain issues right now, kind of in these modes. It looks pretty good, but it'll be very helpful, especially like the eyes, to see some color on them. So let's go into vertex paint mode. Switch back to this. And let's just get kind of basic skin color here. If I remember, there we go. We do want to make sure that our viewport shading is on vertex. And what am I missing here? Oh, I'm on the wrong, that's why. Need to have your object selected and then go to vertex paint mode. There we go. Okay, and let's just, there's no fill yet for this mode yet, but we can just scroll our brush up really big and just tap, and that's basically gonna fill. And bear in mind, this is not the same as regular texture painting or whatever. This is more for previs and just figuring some stuff out. Honestly, I'm not even sure if it shows up in renders. I think I'm sure you can render it using Blender, but it's not really for that yet. It's really more for, like I said, just kind of laying in color and figuring stuff out. Let's give her some give her a little bit of just slight lip color. It might even be too much. Generally, people's lips, even with maybe even some lipstick on, aren't as saturated as we tend to think they are. Okay, and now one of the big things I wanted to do was get the eyes. So let's go into object mode, or let's get the let's get these two as my lock. Turn off lock object modes, and then I should be able to paint both of these at the same time. So let's get kind of a dark brown. Actually, let's go even more like almost purplish for her, I think. And because I got the modifiers going, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so the lock object mode is not going to work on this. Let's isolate that just so I can see the back here. Get that one. And then select that. Go to vertex paint. Same deal. I just want, right now, not too overly concerned with it. I just want kind of a dark color. and probably need to go ahead and do the bottom of the eyelid too, but let's just work on the eyes for now. For now I've got enough to visualize what I'm trying to do. So I need to focus on getting the eyes figured out. So number one, let's shade those smooth. And then I'm going to go into edit mode real quick. And let's isolate that. Hold Alt, select the edge loop. I'm going to mark that as sharp for now. And then we're going to select faces. Oops. Hold Shift and Alt. Select these face. Oops. Careful not to select the wrong one though. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to Shift. There we go. And now we're going to go back into Vertex Paint mode. Turn on this, and see now it's only showing the area that I've got highlighted in edit mode. That way we can only edit that one part. So now, what I haven't really decided on a color for eyes. Again, I'm going to stick with kind of a purple, but maybe a lighter. Like so. Okay, and then lastly, let's go back into edit mode and just select this center ring here. Oops. Select center ring and then Control Alt that outer ring. Or actually, what is it? Hold Control. We'll just do that. Okay, and then back into Vertex Paint mode, and we're just gonna go with like a super dark, pretty much just black for right there. And then back into, let's just say object mode, and now we've got, now it's a little bit easier to kind of tell what's going on there. If we really want to go the extra mile, we can put in kind of our own artificial highlight. Do we want to do that? Let's do that. So I think what I'm going to do is set our cursor, add in a cylinder, scroll it all the way down like so, RX90, so it's facing us. Let's go into, it's actually not too bad, but scale it in on the Y axis. Okay, and now we have sort of a artificial highlight there. I'm going to go ahead and move that world cursor back to the world origin. Let's scale it even more, just so it's really flat, and then move it back out, just to give us kind of an artificial highlight. And same deal, let's give it a mirror modifier. Which actually that's not. Let's see if we can get this. That's not ideal because actually the highlights should be kind of offset on this eye. It should be on the same side of the eye as that one, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Or as a matter of fact, let's just not even use a mirror modifier. We'll just create a duplicate. We'll create a linked duplicate. So Alt D, that creates a duplicate, but they're linked so that if I edit one, the other one gets edited too. Might even do do another one smaller like so. And then Alt D, same thing on this side. Okay, and that gives us just kind of a illusion of a highlight. Okay, you guys, I think that's time for another break. Give me a few minutes and we will be back. Okay, you guys, it's actually about time for dinner for me. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sign off for a little bit, and we're gonna come back a little bit later and continue on. So, stop back in later, or if you're watching this in the future, there should be another installment.